Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I had this buddy, let's call him Dave, who worked at the same manufacturing company from the age of 26 all the way until he was 64 when this crazy situation unfolded. Dave gave me the okay to share his tale, as long as I kept things vague and anonymous. Part of what kicked things off was the government extending the retirement age not once, but twice during Dave's career. First from 62 to 65 when he was in his mid-50s, then again from 65 to 67 a few years later. The previous owners, this family-run operation, treated their employees really well. From what I heard, they gave an extra week of vacation for every 6 years with the company. So, on top of the standard 4 weeks, Dave had racked up an extra 6 by the time all this went down. Folks could also work from home for up to 2 weeks a year, or just take an extra week off instead if their role didn't allow remote work. Long story short, Dave was getting a generous 11 weeks off annually. Here's where it gets really good. The family owners let anyone over 55 use their vacation time however they wanted. Take it all at once, with just a couple weeks' notice as a courtesy, spread it out, or even bank it to use right before retirement. Now, we've got another issue in our country where processing retirement paperwork is a nightmare. They take forever, like 2 years in some cases, to calculate what you're owed and start paying out. During that delay, you only get the bare minimum. But Dave, being an experienced, well-paid engineer with over 44 years under his belt, was looking at a hefty retirement payout once everything got sorted. So the owners let folks stockpile their vacation weeks for that transition period, sometimes taking off 20, 30 weeks at the end to make that minimum payment stretch further while they waited for the full amount. Genius, right? Well, the company gets sold to some subsidiary of a big conglomerate, and the new bosses immediately start axing all the good old policies. In Dave's department, there were 3 senior engineers. Him, another guy named, let's say Bob, and a third fellow we'll call John. They fire Bob right off the bat, and sadly, poor John has a heart attack and passes away just a week later. They also dock Dave's pay by 15% because, according to them, he was making too much for a simple engineer. Here's the kicker. Dave, Bob, and John held patents on the machinery, the manufacturing process, and a key component they'd innovated years ago, which made production 30% cheaper and 75% faster. The original owners had actually put those patents in their names as a thank you. Suddenly, at 64, Dave's the last man standing in his role, and they hire 6 fresh faces for him to train up, giving him until the end of the year to burn through any unused vacation time he'd stockpiled. Little did they know, Dave had been taking just 5 weeks off for the past decade, banking the rest. Are you ready for this? Dude had 87 weeks saved up, including that year's allowance. So they throw these 6 new hires at him and say, get him trained in 6 months. Mind you, Dave's still got 3 years until retirement at this point. You know what he does? Gives them a measly 3-hour notice one Friday evening, and the following Monday, Dave's on vacation for the next 87 weeks. Management doesn't even notice until that Thursday when the CEO walks by and sees the 6 newbies just sitting around with no one training them. Pandemonium ensues. Calls, emails, letters, home visits, the whole 9 yards. Dave's just living his best life, spending most of his time at his mother-in-law's place right across the street, watching the circus unfold. Week 11 rolls around and one of the 2 production lines breaks down. Management is in full meltdown mode now, showing up at Dave's house 4 times a day. 2 weeks later, the second line conks out, leaving only 4 weeks worth of backstock to keep the rest of production afloat. It's December, just before Christmas, when Dave moseys into work on week 13 to grab something from his locker. The CEO just unloads on him, screaming, "You're stopping this vacation nonsense right now and fixing everything." Ever the smooth operator, Dave counters with an offer. He'll come back for 3 days to sort things out if they tack that whole week onto his remaining vacation bank. Begrudgingly, the CEO agrees, desperate to get production back on track. Dave even leaves them some basic maintenance notes before clocking out for another extended break. A few weeks into the new year, another line goes down, so they summon Dave back using the same 3-day deal. When he's about to leave after fixing it up, the CEO pipes up, "See you at 8 a.m. tomorrow." Dave's like, "Excuse me?" The CEO lays it out. "You were supposed to claim all that banked vacation time by the end of last year. Since you just ended your claimed time off, you're forfeiting the remaining 69 weeks. Well, Dave is furious at this point, so he marches straight to the labor board to file a complaint about this shady rule change. The clerk listening to his story literally calls colleagues over to hear this insanity, and they're all cracking up. Shockingly, Dave gets a ruling the very next day. He gets to keep those 69 weeks off under the previous policy, since that's when that time was accrued. plus another 6 weeks for the new year. Dave struts back into the CEO's office and slaps that ruling onto his desk. If looks could kill, this CEO's face would have dropped Dave where he stood. The CEO's forced to accept Dave coming in for 3 days every 5 weeks to train the newbies and do maintenance. If they need him any other time, too bad. They should have built up more backstock. This same song and dance repeats for a whole year until Dave's 66 and has taken his final 5-week vacation stint. On his last day before retiring, the furious CEO personally hands Dave a termination notice, effective his very first day back. Dave fakes total shock, takes his personal belongings, just an old coffee mug at this point, and leaves for one last 5-week vacay. Here's where it gets juicy. There's a penalty for retiring even a few months early, so Dave's been delaying filing to avoid a hit to his payout. With the termination, he's got no choice but to put in for retirement, or so the CEO thinks. On his first day of unemployment, Dave sends the company a cease and desist, revoking their license to use the patents he co-owned with Bob and John's family. Production's about to grind to a dead halt without that cost-cutting, accelerated process they'd pioneered. Turns out Dave had been working with Bob and John's widow this whole time, getting them on board with his revenge scheme and even supporting John's widow financially, though he'd kept that under wraps. With their patents now in limbo, the company faces either paying 40% more for the same output using old methods or grinding production entirely while developing a new process from scratch. 3 weeks in, with backstock dwindling rapidly, the CEO's forced to make a wildly lopsided deal to stay operational. Dave becomes an obscenely overpaid independent contractor who retains the patents, does maintenance H-Force commissioned, and has an on-site team for routine upkeep that he handpicks and overpays. Not only does Dave poach all 6 of the newbies he'd trained and get them double their previous salary as his maintenance crew, he even brings Bob aboard after getting him rehired. Meanwhile, Dave's raking it in, getting paid top dollar for each maintenance call, while his overpaid crew handles the day-to-day upkeep. All because the new owners tried to nickel and dime a loyal, experienced employee out of earned benefits. Word of Dave's successful gambit against corporate greed spread like wildfire once the dust settled. At the old owner's funeral, Dave and lots of other long-timers swapped stories about their own tales of mistreatment by the new management team. Apparently, Dave wasn't the only one pushed into launching a covert counterattack involving patents or intellectual property. 3 other employees had pulled similar moves, though none quite as extravagant as Dave's 2-year paid vacation saga. Even the deceased owner's widow and sister, who were minority partners before the sale, cackled delightedly at the stories of corporate arrogance blowing up in the new owner's faces. As Dave recounted it to me over beers one night, the big bosses learned the hard way that you can't put a price on respecting your workforce and keeping institutional knowledge in-house. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, or in their case, an empty assembly line and a hefty bill for putting one man's extended vacation on the company dime. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived in my house for over 15 years, and it's always been a dream of mine to have a vegetable garden. There's just something so satisfying about growing your own fresh fruits and veggies. This spring, I finally decided to go for it. I cleared out a nice patch of yard, tilled the soil, built some raised beds, and planted all sorts of goodies. Tomatoes, peppers, zucchini, carrots, you name it. I was so proud of my little garden. It was really shaping up nicely as summer rolled around. My tomato plants were loaded with bright red fruit, and my zucchini was absolutely gigantic. Every evening when I got home from work, I'd take a little stroll through my garden, pruning here and there, checking for ripe veggies to pick. It was my own personal little oasis. That is, until I got a rude interruption in the form of a letter from the Homeowner Association president. Now, I'll admit, I don't really pay too much attention to the Homeowner Association. I'm just not one of those nosy type A people who gets all bent out of shape about neighborhood rules, but apparently my vegetable garden was a major eyesore to the president. The letter stated that all front yard gardens were prohibited in our community. It demanded that I cease and desist all gardening activities immediately or face a fine of $50 per day. $50 per day! Just for growing some damn vegetables. I was fuming. This busybody president was clearly on a major power trip. I marched right over to his house to give him a piece of my mind. When he opened the door, I could immediately tell why this guy was president. He just oozed superiority and arrogance. Before I could even open my mouth, he started lecturing me about following the rules to maintain order in the neighborhood. I told him in no uncertain terms that I would not be getting rid of my garden just because he had an obsession with controlling everyone's front yard. This rat-faced tyrant then had the audacity to threaten me again with fines, saying he was just trying to enforce compliance. At this point, I was seeing red. It took every ounce of restraint not to cuss this guy out on his front porch. I said, "See you in court," and walked away before I did something I'd regret. Over the next few days, I rallied support from my neighbors who also hated how this blowhard president acted like he ran a dictatorship instead of a homeowners association. A few of them had also been on the receiving end of his ridiculous fines and power trips. We all agreed it was time to give him the boot. I collected signatures from over half the homeowners demanding a special meeting to vote no confidence in the president. Well, Mr. Dictator didn't take too kindly to that. He accused me of treason and causing dissension in our tight-knit community. But he begrudgingly scheduled the meeting due to our sheer force of numbers against him. The night of the meeting arrived, and it was clear the president thought he still held all the cards. He started the meeting by saying some nonsense about how it was our civic duty to obey the rules without question. I had had enough. I stood up and let loose on this guy, telling everyone how he levied ridiculous fines on hardworking homeowners just trying to enjoy their property. How he acted more like a prison warden than a community servant. Other neighbors chimed in with grievances about his heavy-handed leadership. The president smugly sat there, not looking worried in the least. But then came time for the no-confidence vote. One by one, over 70% of the homeowners voted to remove him from office. You should have seen the look on his face when he realized he had been voted out. It was a mix of shock, anger, and disbelief. He went off about how we were all fools who didn't understand his vision for the neighborhood. But he had no choice but to relinquish his title, and his petty dictatorship came to an end. Sweet justice had been served. And the very next day I headed out to my garden and got to harvesting peppers, cucumbers, and green beans to my heart's content, with no one to bother me. As for the ex-president, rumor has it that people actually collect their dog poop and dump it right on his front porch whenever he threatens them over minor issues, a dose of his own medicine. So in the end, my vegetable garden and I won the day. And more importantly, that power-hungry homeowner association president finally got knocked off his high horse. Try as he may, he won't ever be able to dictate what I do on my own property again. The next one is a petty revenge story. Today, my micromanager came to my desk and made me give her access to my calendar so that she could see full details of every Outlook appointment. Of course, I complied. After she walked away, I deleted all of the tasks I've ever entered to make sure I'm blocking off time to accomplish my work during normal business hours, and created a new calendar that I will use to document what I'm working on and how long it takes me to do so. I did leave team meetings, paid holidays, and PTO on the calendar she made me share with her. Hopefully it's not too obvious that I won't be using it in the way she believes will allow her to see how I'm scheduling my workflow. I am salaried and am very diligent about getting things done between the hours of 5, so that I don't get ducked into working on nights and weekends. She has had to pick up work from other project managers whose workloads were too much for them to handle. I believe she's either trying to justify firing me or assigning me other people's work. Now my calendar won't reflect my day-to-day tasks, so she won't know for sure what I'm working on until we run monthly reporting. I have to track my time in our software and meet a KPM of 80% tracked to a project each month. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I had just quit my BA in economics. It just wasn't right for me, and quickly needed a job while figuring out what to do while paying my bills. I found one in a call center. This center was a subcontractor for big companies. In my case, it was the second biggest telco company in the country, and they partially outsourced first and second level support for DTV, internet, and phone services to the company I worked for. The job was okay, not very demanding, hilarious interactions with customers and nice coworkers, but I soon discovered that management was just a bunch of inflated egos with glorious ideas but no talent. So, after about a year, I was promoted to supervisor. Just a flashy title for solving the crappy cases, no pay raise or other benefits. Apparently I did a good job because 3 months later I got called into the office by the management team. Their plan was to form a training team and they wanted me to lead it. At that point, I still didn't know what I wanted to do with my career, so I just said yes. And that's when the crap show started. They gave me a contract with no detailed job description, a fixed salary, plus a monthly bonus, which I can get by achieving certain milestones every month. When I asked what those milestones are, they just said they will define them every month. Okay, fine by me. As the employee with fixed salary, I also had to report my hours every month to my assigned manager. Let's call him Frederick. So here we go. As I said before, they had lots of fancy ideas, but no clue. I asked countless times what their plan was with that training department, what my tasks were, what my milestones are, and I only got some wishy-washy speech about some grand ideas. In the end, I was tasked with all sort of nonsense, helping out with calls, best paid call center agent ever, designing signs for the center, where to find the toilet, for example, and stuff like that. They actually gave me so much nonsense work that I had to work overtime. But fine, I just do it, submit my report at the end of the month and figure out my life. There was just one thing that really pissed me off: the bonus. After the first payment, I noticed the bonus was missing. So I asked Frederick why. He said that we never defined the milestones, so I did not reach them. I am not stupid, and I know my rights. Fact is, he has to give me the milestones. If he does not, then there are none, and I am entitled to the bonus regardless. I could have made a fuss about it right then and there, but I decided to be quiet and just go with his nonsense. But I made sure to forward ever-important mail about my role, salary, and bonus to my private mail. So this went on for about 6-7 months until I had a pretty big accident which kept me in the hospital for 2 weeks and then at home for another 6 weeks. The company had a habit of firing people after such a long absence, which is illegal but hard to prove. So I knew that the moment I came back, I would be fired. Sure enough, the day came, and as soon as I walked through the door, with my pretty sign on it, I saw Frederick and the HR lady marching towards me. They escorted me into an office and told me I was fired immediately because they decided to close the training department. That never really existed in the first place. In my country, the notice period for both parties is usually 3 months, but it is possible to let someone go effect immediately. That means I still get 3-month pay, but I am not allowed to work there anymore. I happily signed the notice and they let me go to my office to pack up. Little did they know that I just went to prepare my farewell gift to them. I had already printed out everything, calculated my overtime and the missing bonuses. So 30 minutes later, I called the HR lady into the office and laid it all out. Due to the fact that they let me go immediately, they had to pay me the overtime plus a surcharge, and of course all the bonuses plus 3 months salary. All in all, it added up to over $15,000. The only thing the HR lady said was, "We didn't expect you to know the laws." I guess that was a slip-up. The next one is an entitled people's story. I had a doctor's appointment a few weeks ago, and while I was in the waiting room, witnessed an entitled lady and her unfortunate friend, unfortunate for having known her. So these ladies come in, and already the friend is pissed off. The lady comes in and is talking to the receptionist, saying they were an hour late to her appointment due to traffic and not being able to find the right car park. There are 2 main car parks at this hospital, one around a 5-minute walk from this clinic and one around 10 minutes away, but there is a drop-off point right outside the door, so not sure why this was relevant if she was running late. Anywho. The entitled friend then started going off about there being no information on the parking. There is in the text email you are sent when the appointment is confirmed, as well as a link to the hospital website where there is also a map and traffic due to roadworks. The receptionist politely informed them that unfortunately, as they missed the appointment, that they would need to reschedule. Cue entitled friend, EF. EF, why does this have to be rescheduled? We have come out all this way for nothing. Are you going to pay for the petrol it took to get here? This is ridiculous. Is there no other appointments today? Receptionist. No, unfortunately our doctors are all busy today and there are no slots available. Turns to the other lady, when would be best to reschedule the appointment? Are there any days that work best? EF. I'm the one who's driving her, so it should be me who you're talking to. When is the earliest appointment? Receptionist. The next appointment is on date. Talking to the other lady, is that date going to work for you? OL. I think that could work, what type? EF. Afternoon is later. Again, I'm driving, so it's up to me when I can take her. Receptionist. I'm sorry, but you are not the patient, and I have to get her confirmation on when to book the appointment. EF. No, you don't. I'm the one who is bringing her. If your hospital wasn't laid out in such a confusing way, we would have been on time. I have mobility issues and can't walk very far, so this is horribly inconvenient. Receptionist. I'm sorry you had to walk so far, but I still need the patient's confirmation before booking the appointment as it is for her. OL. Afternoon works for me. Later would be easier, I think. Receptionist. Thank you. I have an appointment available for time 1 or time 2. EF, time 2. Receptionist. Again, I need the patient's confirmation before I can book the appointment. Turns back to OL. Which time works better? OL, time 2. Please. Receptionist. Thank you. I'll get that booked in for you. EF then went on a long rant about having to walk all the way there from the car park, how inconvenient it was for her to bring her friend there, and how much she hates that she has to come back again another day. I just kept feeling sorry for the other lady because she shouldn't have to put up with friends like EF, much less rely on her to bring her to appointments. Many ways this could have been solved without the attitude. EF could have dropped OL at the door and waited in the car. They could have checked online before about where they were going. They could have left earlier to get through traffic. Parking is free for patients, so they wouldn't have had to worry about paying for extra parking. I did joke with the receptionist afterwards that I'm glad I didn't have friends like EF, and I hope they didn't have to put up with people like that a lot. Thankfully, they don't. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.